What are we listening to? Is it Vaporwave? But wait, this is like what hipsters will listen to. Nostalgic retro decent tune. This is hypnagogic pop. Okay, folks, calm down, I can see your message. Don't Google it. I miss Google. Stay in the room, then you'll know. Why hypnagogic pop? Vaporwave is the next step in the evolution of hypnagogic pop. They share some characteristics like using trash background music of TV commercials and music, applying endless loops, drones and repetitions. They both using plunderphonic technique, manipulating the material to defamiliarize it. That is, to create a memory with vague and subconscious remembrance. Do you remember those tunes that your parents listened to the radio or watched TV at night when you, as a little kid, were already in bed? Most of people vaguely remember. Most of the time, you heard those tunes in a drowsy and dream state. It happened to those producers as well. For producers of hypnagogic pop, they tried to activate the nostalgia of their childhood by sampling tunes or copying pop format from 70s and 80s. Now, we are listening to Neon Indian's Local Joke. He sampled the beginning glittering synth from Todd Rundgren's How About a Little Fanfare in the 70s and transported the pitch. The rest of the song is new composition of himself, imitating and maintaining the vibe of synthpop in the 80s, which shows his personal fondness and taste. However,
it's source material. It's source material. Source material.
Vaporwave focuses on source material from the 80s, 90s and onwards, giving it a more contemporary feel and more roots for nostalgia that younger generations might still remember from their youth with more resonance. Also, the source material of Vaporwave reflects the irony and contradiction of capitalist utopian aspirations. Daniel Lopatin. A Kojam Volume 1 was released in 2010 under his alias, Chuck Person. This is considered as a proto-vaporwave album. Lopatin sampled commercial pop from the 80s, 90s and 2000s that were used to play in the public, like shopping mall, as background music. They also represented the economic ecology back then. In this album, you can hear clearly the looping, and
pitch-shifting techniques
on a short phrase, a moment of the original. The sonic result can be described politically as an attempt to make the corporate power against itself through the process of co-opting, hacking and mocking. Lopatin recycled those sound sources and recontextualized the meaning. The album also provides a listening experience that forces us to reconsider the democracy of production, that the chopped, screwed and sampled application is not a narrative of progress, but formulating new histories entirely.
Sir, would you like to receive the New Yorker directly on your iTablet? As you wish.
Farside Virtual, a collection of eerily wholesome music delivered in an uncomfortably straightforward manner. James Ferraro sampled not only TV commercial music and background shopping music, like elevator music and Muzak, but also sound design of theme music of Skype login, Windows XP shutdown, GameCube menu theme, Nintendo Wii startup and others, which he is inspired by Brian Eno's Windows 95 theme music. The use of these sounds implies the contemporary world occupied by technological products that offer human private entertainment and unnecessary convenience, which satisfies the consumers but at the same time dehumanizes the society. When listening to Farside Virtual, though the vibe of the music seems enjoyable and cheerful on the surface, like living in an ideal metropolitan city, there are senses of soullessness and creepiness due to the robotic voice like me, Miss Google, and those sounds making people associate with technological machine like iPad, computer and game controller. The use of those sound sources to create a seemingly brand new music product is a huge middle finger to the contemporary consumerist society where people buying into new and fancy products that are actually just repackaged and sent back to the shop. Vaporwave satirizes the emptiness of a hyper-capitalist society. In 2011, Macintosh Plus released Floral Shop, that became a classic and pivotal album of Vaporwave. Apart from some moments when the sound bites are looped in a very short duration, the overall signature sticks to the easily counting 4/4, and the manipulated easy listening samples create a dreamlike new world, which ironically reflects the consumerist obsession with the new and perfect products and the imaginary world. One of the tracks in this album,
リサフランク420、現代のコンピュー、
sampled from Diana Ross's Your Move, which is also the sound material of Sacred Tapestries'
新たな夢、
Spirited Child, Color Ocean Sky, in Shader album released in 2012. It's worth noting that these pseudonym, Macintosh Plus and Sacred Tapestry, are actually under the same person, Ramona Andra Xavier, who are also known as Vectroid, New Dreams Limited, Prism Corp, Virtual Enterprises and other countless names. In a way, it's another implication that the corporations register for subsidiary companies trying to fool the consumers around to get more profit. Also, the names of Vaporwave artists provide vague locality with the exotic Japanese words used for song titles that confuses the listeners even more. This represents the globalization facilitated by digital and online realm and the ideological utopia free from the real world. But why Vaporwave music sounds so nostalgic? Vaporwave plays with the notion, memory. How well can you remember the first time you go to school as a little kid? How authentic is the memory? Each of our memories are more or less composed of forgotten and exaggerated information. Nothing is remembered properly. When those musical elements that symbolizes the waste and discarded products from capitalistic consumer culture trigger one of the fragments in your memory, you feel a sense of déjà vu and nostalgia. At the same time, you are questioning, did it really happen in this way? Did I actually live through it? You feel both familiar and unfamiliar. Vaporwave is a play of this paradoxical and unexplainable experience centering around something that never happened. This can be sonically represented by the application of heavy reverberation and removal of middle-range frequency band, the main sound body, to create a far-away and hollow sense.
Don't say no.
latter generation of Vaporwave explore not only the inhuman and alienating representation of the ironic idealization of the past, but also the utopianism that reflects the shifts, the top-down motivation and the modes of what we long for about perception and life. In a Red Bull interview, Hong Kong Express says Vaporwave creates a dreamlike feeling not necessary about capitalism, consumerism, but projecting a vivid image into the listener's mind that can be conceptual or evocative of a certain mood. In his albums, like 2047, he tried to project an image of loneliness and love in a big city, which reflects the emotional emptiness and isolation in contemporary society. He sampled Cantonese and Mandarin lines of some Hong Kong films that creates an imaginary, exotic and distant world for Western listeners. It's worth noting that Hong Kong Express, his label, Dream Catalogue, leads Vaporwave into a new life after the stagnancy that tons of Vaporwave followers tried to be another Macintosh Plus. The label releases Vaporwave music with the philosophy that Vaporwave's frame of irony and capitalism should be developing into telling a narrative of escapism and fantasy to a distant world through music. Create a dreamlike world that can escape from the real world full of hardships and monotony that are constantly moving and changing. But what makes Vaporwave a meme? From aforementioned albums, we can conclude three pivotal ideas of Vaporwave: recontextualization, virtual reality, and cultural appropriation. That we can also say Vaporwave is not merely a genre, but also an art movement. Malsoft, the concept behind it is to create an abandoned space with feelings of distance and detachment. It meant to be played repeatedly in the background while listeners are doing their own thing. This reflects the online generation who are obsessed with social media and cannot really focus on one task, not to mention a whole album. While most subgenres of Vaporwave create soothing, sluggish and mellow vibe, Hard Vapor, however, explores the sonic dissonance and aggressive sound to connote the post-apocalypse. Although the fact that it meant to be against the alternate utopia of Vaporwave, the Slavic imagery of Hard Vapor, and Eastern European pseudo-name of Hard Vapor artists are apparently stemmed from Vaporwave.
Come on, everybody, we're late. Bart, I want you to promise me you'll pay attention in Sunday school. Bart? Bart? Bart!
Are you talking to me?
What's this? A personal stereo. Were you going to listen to
Vaporwave
in Sunday school?
Maybe.
Can you believe this, Homer? Homer?
It's worth noting that Vaporwave music usually comes with a certain visual aesthetics, recontextualizing logos, primitive 3D net art, video games, consumer products and corporate commercials with visual effects of warped out and messed up looking tapes. This creates a sense of being in a memory cave. This aesthetic further influences Simpson Wave. A genre combines video of The Simpsons cartoon with vaporwave music. The uniqueness of The Simpsons is the long life spanning between 1980s and early 2000s, when it accompanied most of the Internet young generation's childhood. Thus, the use of vaporwave music that creates an atmosphere of nostalgia as soundtrack of Simpsons video collage provides a double hit of nostalgia. Another interesting fact of it is that Hughes, the visual artist behind Simpson Wave, his video, HOMERSCAPE 1992, with Macintosh plus Vaporwave track,
聞こ
has far more views than the original video of
聞こ
has. It shows the potentials of a refined aesthetic that is facilitated by combining an underground movement with pop culture. The visual aesthetic also creeps to the game domain. Donkey Kong.x emerges from online game jam forum and is recreated with Vaporwave's aesthetic. This implies that Vaporwave and the original of the game itself, Donkey Kong Country, could be considered dead already. At the same time, the investment in playing with and reimagining them extends their lives and echoes their spirits.